You're listening to The Secrets of Sacred Art, where we unearth the hidden treasures, history, and deeper meanings in religious and sacred art. To see the beautiful art in this episode, please watch The Secrets of Sacred Art on the StarQuest YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to this show and all your favorite SQPN shows in Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and your favorite podcast app. We're your hosts, Kathryn Laffrey
and Alix Murray. Welcome to The Secrets of Sacred Art again. And welcome back, Kathryn. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. Yeah.
Volleyball season went well.
Yay. And now we're back. Now I'm back into jumper season or sweater season. So there you go.
Oh, yeah.
So today we're going to follow up on with a two-part series about one of the pieces of art featured in our last episode with good old Thomas Salerno on the secrets of TV and movies, where we discussed the film The Monuments Men. We're going to introduce you to two of the men who created the most incredible piece of sacred art, Hubert and Jan van Eyck, the brothers who were behind the Adoration of the Mystical Lamb, also known as the Ghent Altarpiece.
There we go. Let everybody remind them what we were looking at.
Exactly. Yeah. Just take in that amazing piece of sacred art. And our viewers really should know that when we were trying to sort out how and what to share with everyone, it was nearly an impossible task for the two of us. We were just talking about how it was just where to begin. And there was just so much that the brothers did. There's so much about their world and ultimately about the altarpiece itself that we struggled to try to figure out where to begin. But
there's so much information. You just type in one of their names and you're going to get lost.
Exactly. But as Maria von Trapp used to say, let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're just going to we're going to have lots of links in the show notes for you. So please take your own deep dive, take your time, and really get to know these artists and their world. And I think if you do that, once we start going into the altarpiece itself, you're going to appreciate it even more. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And I need to find another word because I was using that all the time.
Are there any words that even work? I mean, really, these guys
I know.
set the world on fire.
They did. Oh my gosh. And so what we want to do is kind of take you into the world of these world builders because they were master world builders.
Yes.
And sometimes I think, gosh, what would they have done with some of the medium and digital medium today? Can you imagine what they would have done? Yeah. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Just blown our minds. It's kind of like if Tolkien could write games and stuff. But
it's fascinating you bring that up because there are some people out there who do digital images where you're getting closer and there's another digital image and closer. I'd have to say they should owe everything that they do now to the Van Eycks.
I agree.
They knew how to draw you in and show you something more.
Yeah, absolutely. That you could just be in there forever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were just incredibly gifted men. And what kind of world would create men such as these two? So I did so many deep dives. And again, this is another show notes. So we're going to be looking at 14th and 15th century Flanders, which is now Belgium and parts of northern France. Oh, thank you very much, Kathryn. Here's a nice...
Give everybody a little spot in the world to look for.
Yes, exactly. And you can see you have Ghent and Bruges and Antwerp, Lille, all these different places in what was called the Burgundian Duchy, or the Duke of Burgundy was an incredibly powerful man. But I mean, I went on a deep dive with the Burgundian, I guess, legacy all the way back to when they were a tribe off the coast of Denmark. So, you
really took a deep dive.
I really did. I just didn't know where to start because they were incredibly powerful. I think what's interesting is this was an incredibly powerful kingdom and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's, and it was a really different kind of kingdom, I think, that people don't necessarily think about in terms of where their power came from. So the Burgundian duchy, where the brothers lived, and they were in Bruges for a time, they were established there. It was a very wealthy and cosmopolitan city, and it was the home of some of the earliest international corporations in the world, such as the Hanseatic League, as well as international bankers and merchants. They traded in the finest wool from England, the finest wine from France, and they did some pretty canny financial deals north of Venice. And we have some examples of that. And I think if you take a look at the next slide.
I have to say, though, that map, location.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They were set up in the right place to go anywhere, everywhere.
To go anywhere and have the world come to them. And that's exactly what happened. It was just a cornucopia of ideas and people and lots of money. Now
helps to be a port city too.
Yeah. And really have create a streamline to get your goods moved around the world, and ideas as well, and culture. So it was an extraordinary place, I can imagine. And the church was also very prominent in this area, and it was very, very influential. And she was a great patron of the arts as well.
Yes.
In this time. And also, I had an experience. My family and I went to Bruges many years ago, and we visited an old medieval hospital. And again, we'll have the links. People should take a look at this hospital. It'll blow your mind. This hospital was founded in the 12th century. It had over 1,000 beds, which is impressive today for a hospital.
When it was founded, 1,000 beds. Amazing.
Yeah. They could take in 1,000 patients. Everybody attended. If you had to be hospitalized, this is where you went. They took people who were indigents. I don't know if that's even a nice word anymore, but whatever. And urchins, shall I say? Children off the street, sick people, peasants, incredibly wealthy people. They all went to this hospital. And they were all tended to, they had surgeons, they had professional doctors, people who specialized in different things, people doctors who specialized in the eyes or the ears, and the main carers, though, were a religious order. And this hospital was active. I think they finally closed it down permanently in 1974.
Wow.
Yeah. That blows your mind. And when I was there, I actually asked someone, something, they must have been doing something right, because you don't get from the 12th century to the 20th century doing a lot of things wrong. So what happened? And I was told it was because of the decrease in the number of religious. So that's what ultimately wrapped it up, was people weren't joining religious orders anymore, which is really quite fascinating when you think about a culture that was such a big part of it. And it was because you did have these big religious orders that enabled a lot of this stuff to happen. Really extraordinary things. And that was part of the world that helped mold and create the Van Eyck brothers, which is something to really think about. The culture that these artists grew up in looked really, really different from our culture. So there were a large number of wealthy potential patrons, and that gave artists and craftsmen endless opportunities to make a name for themselves and to create the finest examples of art the world has ever known. And that is not an exaggeration. Just really stunning work. The Guild of St. Luke was established in 1351, and it later became known as a corporation of image and saddle makers. I'm not sure I'm sure there's some connection. Maybe
I
some of our
love
listeners
that
or
they have-
viewers.
I mean, I love horses. Used to take care of horses when I was in high school. So to
Yeah.
have that this guild was not only images but saddles, it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, see that I'm like wondering how. So it would. I mean, I'm going to go with it. It's fine with me, but I just think it's nice that combination, like, oh, these two things should work together, you know. And but this guild consisted of painters of linen and canvas. So you know, there were different techniques, and mirror manufacturers, stained glass window artists. That kind of makes sense. And like I said, saddle and harness makers. And well, of course, when you think about some of the medieval saddlery, you know, it was quite impressive. So maybe
with a little bit of like silversmithing added on there in the buckles and clasps.
Yeah, and the fabrics and all kinds of, you know, the blankets that the horses had. They weren't just kind of cotton batting and wool kind of things. They were quite fancy. And the guilds supported, trained, and represented its members, and as well as negotiated with patrons. So they were pretty powerful. And, you know,
marketing too. Nice.
Yeah. And I'm actually a very strong believer that guilds should be reestablished, because what's interesting is in this time in history, and again, this is where we have to realize this is going to be, it's a different world. You know, we're used to the starving artist, aren't we? Like from La Boheme, the starving, tragic artist scraping.
I heard that's where it all starts, is from some show somewhere that, you know, glorifies the starving artist, and all of a sudden everybody's supposed to give their work away for free. No. Yeah,
that's not what these guys were doing, or women, quite frankly. There were women in these guilds, and they had a voice, they had a political presence, they were incredibly talented, they supported natural talents, and they, of course, had a standard. You know, you couldn't produce something that was a piece of rubbish and expect to sell it. That just would not be tolerated. So they really had, you know, to be an artist, you could make a very good living because you had the support. It was part of the culture. People understood that beauty and artistry really, really was an important part of being a human being, which we've always tried to talk about. So I'm just looking at, so the Netherlands and Flanders in the 14th century, they were flourishing, and it was optimistic, and it was probably a wonderful place to live. You had lots of wealth and people willing to spend their money on the arts and crafts, and whether it was to adorn their homes or to pay tribute to God, either way, if you were a talented artist, your work was in high demand, and the artists and craftsmen were respected and moved easily in the circles of their patrons. And in many ways, it must have been an incredible experience. And you needed to have a tremendous amount of natural talent, as I said, because the demand was there. And you had to be willing to work hard. But that would have been fostered and supported by a society that valued those natural talents and the arts for various reasons, including for the good of their souls and the souls of others. That's a big part of it.
Yes.
So that was a small and somewhat idealized thumbnail sketch of the world of the brothers Van Eyck. And let's find out a little bit about the brothers themselves, shall we?
Yeah. Well, so we take a look. We had this image.
Yeah, going back a little bit.
The patronage.
Yes. So this is called the Arnolfini marriage portrait, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It's a really interesting piece. I actually saw it in person yesterday at the National Gallery in London. Yes. And it's kind of amazing. It's, you know what? It's amazing to look at on a video screen or in a book. It's nothing compared to looking at it in real life. And I would love for anybody, if you're in London, you need to go see this. If you're on holiday in London or somehow can get there, it's worth it. It's worth tramping up the steps and kind of pushing your way through the crowds just to look at this. It's in a really small.
So my first question, since you got to see it in person, how big is it because you can never tell from a photograph.
It's not that big. It's
Really?
probably, no, it's, oh my gosh, I didn't have my tape measure with me. Sorry, but
Okay, give it relative to body length then.
So I want to say it was a little, like if you have, like I have my laptop open, like if I were to open up my laptop and like straighten it, it's just a tiny bit bigger than that.
Oh, wow, that's much smaller than I imagined.
Yeah, it's small. And the details, I mean, you can get, in fact, my daughter was with me and she's like, Mom, you can't touch it. I'm like, I'm not going to touch it. But like, I guess my face was so close to it. And even none of the detail is lost. None of the detail is lost. You get your nose right up against the nose of that little dog. And you can still see the little spark in his eye and his little wet nose and his fur, you know, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, this is one painting, I mean, throughout like high school and then college, it always comes up in art history. It's iconic of that time. And
it is.
You can never get bored looking at it.
No.
There is always something new. And all these years I've looked at it, now having the, computer screen to really jump deep into it. I took a real deep dive. I'm going to get our faces out of the way here.
Yeah.
And looked up real close at the mirror.
Yeah.
So just thinking about the size that you said that this piece is, that mirror is pretty small.
It is. It's probably, maybe the size of, this is so bad. I've been out of the States so long, I don't know the size of money, but I would say this is a little bit bigger than a 50p coin. I don't know if there's a...
so like a $50 or...
Yeah.
Bigger than a quarter.
Yeah, a little bit bigger than a quarter.
Okay. That's tiny. Especially seeing the reflection in there is so perfectly done.
Yeah.
And then that makes these little tiny bits where you have at the top, he did a crucifixion of Christ.
Yeah. Well, those are the, I don't think it's the Stations of the Cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Are they supposed to be like
10.
moments in the life of Mary? And
I'm not sure. I think so. And also, they are supposed to be set behind glass. And that's what you are seeing, the reflections. So they would be set behind glass that would be kind of concave or domed. And that would have magnified that image a little bit in the mirror itself. So it's a concave mirror. And then all of these little images around it are also concave. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
And then I also added behind here the little wooden clogs.
Yeah.
And they have mud on them.
The muddy streets of Bruges or Ghent. Yeah.
Just a little detail like that is fascinating.
It is. It absolutely is. And people would have understood that. There's a lot of symbolism in this painting that is missed on I think the average person. And I mean, it's missed on me. It's missed on you. There are some things that just have symbols that have fallen out of use that we don't know anymore. And unless you're, highly trained and you spend your life studying this, you're not going to understand everything. But one of the things I think is fascinating about this, if you can go back to the larger painting, so we can take a look at, Thank you. So this woman in this glorious robe, which is made of wool, and the sleeves, that kind of thing, they're pinked or they're just snipped to create that folding. It's a way of cutting the wool, so it's not sewn like that. It's sheared or cut in a particular way.
And we will definitely have a link so that people can see this high resolution image. And thankfully, there are some great high res images out there that you can on your computer just zoom way in at your leisure. You're going to want to take your time with this because all the little pinking cuts on the ruffle of that sleeve are fabulous. Even the ruffle of her headdress is just amazing.
Yeah. It has the same pinking. And what's interesting is, so this is called the Arnolfini marriage proposal or marriage portrait. But when I was doing research on this, it turns out that this image was actually painted. The woman in this painting, the bride, was dead when this was painted. So it's not a marriage painting. You know, it could have been, a lot of times donors and patrons will put themselves into paintings in a way of bidding for prayers of people who would see the painting. And so knowing that she had died, perhaps this was a way of the widower or his family or even her family to have, like, you know, please remember to pray for her, because that was one of the reasons patrons used to have themselves painted into paintings.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other side,
sorry.
can you go back?
Oh, yeah. I'll go back to that. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Oops.
Go back to the painting. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the background, so the 1, 2, 3, the third one over, right above the painting, and I think a lot of people might know this already, but I just think it's lovely that Jan van Eyck wrote in his really beautiful hand. I mean, he even had great handwriting. He wrote, Jan van Eyck was here.
I can never imagine myself signing the middle of a painting.
Yeah, but you know what? If you could paint like that,
oh, heck yeah.
It would be just fine.
If I had a patron who said, please put your name in the middle, I would gladly do that for them.
Exactly. And in that reflection of the mirror, you can see Jan van Eyck as he's painting. He's just an incredible artist. And also these patrons should give you a reflection of the wealth and the cosmopolitan world that they lived in. You know, you've got oranges by the windowsill on the little desk or table or chest, you know, velvet, furs, probably from Scandinavia or Russia. You've got the wool that probably came from England at this point. England was known for exporting some of the finest wool in Europe. So, you know, these people, they were wearing things that were imported, very expensive. The little dog, I don't think that was a working dog.
No, he's definitely a little toy.
Yeah, he's their little friend in the house, an indulgence. So
I just hope the oranges don't have the same meaning they do in The Godfather.
Oh. No, I think this was in Northern Europe. Not New York in was it the 1960s, 1930s?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that was just a little bit of an example of the younger brother, Jan van Eyck. But let's talk a little bit about both of them. They were Hubert and Jan van Eyck were born in a village of Meesik near Maastricht. And my apologies for the pronunciations. I was doing such a deep dive on everything, I failed to look up how to pronounce things. So my apologies. They were one of several children in a family of painters. They did have a sister, Margareta, who was a well-known miniaturist, and another brother, Lambert, who was the younger brother, and he actually eventually took over the family workshop when Jan van Eyck passed away. And so here we have Meister Hubertus Pictor, and he was born around 1366 to 1390. So again, a little bit vague of when he was born. He was the older of the two brothers, and he was considered by Jan van Eyck to be the superior artist, which boggles the mind. But okay, Jan, if you say that. And so here we have a picture that had, at one point, it was attributed to a painter called Petrus Christus, who actually studied in the Van Eyck workshop. But now experts believe that this is the one surviving painting by Hubert van Eyck, and it is the Three Marys at the tomb. And there's just a lot to take in on this one, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Those classic Van Eyck angel wings. Love the angel wings.
They look like they're glowing. There's just a radiance from the inside out. Yeah. And
then all the detail into the landscape behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I find really fascinating about what they can do, they almost have, and again, this is what makes their world so familiar and yet otherworldly. It has this dimension that, we have in the natural world, but the way it's set up and a little bit flat, it really takes you into another world. Like you feel like you could be walking around in that world, but it would be really different. It would be a really different, strange place to be. Again, the angles of the tomb. This is going to sound
strange, maybe. It seems like a more real
yes
world?
Yeah exactly, because you can see the tomb, you can see angles of the tomb that you wouldn't naturally be able to see if you were standing somewhere, but you can see the whole tomb. You can see the completeness of it. You can see the rich folds of the angel's clothes, and everyone's clothes, and the three soldiers sleeping all cuddled up. You could just go right up there and be part of it, part of what was going on, and you could be kind of the fourth person going to the tomb. So it really is fascinating the way they managed to portray the world.
Yes.
And so Hubert is believed that he was actually a member of the minor orders at St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist Cathedral in Ghent. And the reason, and I was like, well, why do you think that? And it's because there are no wedding records associated with his name, and there are no children associated with his name. And I was kind of like, well, so what? So you suddenly just assume that the man was a religious, but he was buried, the way he was buried and everything does suggest that he was probably one of the minor orders at the cathedral. He was given a place of honor when he was buried. And so he could have been, with the minor orders we're talking about, he could have been an acolyte, he could have been a lectern, he could have been an exorcist. And that is actually quite interesting when you look at some of their paintings and how an exorcism is depicted. So we'll more on that later. So that's really all we know about Hubert van Eyck, because he died before the Ghent Altarpiece was finished. He had started it. It's believed that he probably had the larger degree of decision making in its layout, but he died before it was finished, and so the rest of it was left over to Jan van Eyck, who had an extraordinary career. And so let's see if we can talk a little bit about Jan van Eyck. And he was born in 1390. Yes, and this is his portrait, his self-portrait. And I saw this yesterday. This is really tiny. This is about half the size of my laptop screen. It's really tiny.
And would you say smaller than a piece of paper? Like a standard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised at how small it was, and you can get right up to it, and it's like looking at a person.
Yes.
And it's kind of strange because it's, we always, I don't know, it's like a standard of artist talent. It's like, oh, how real can that be? When you have a lot of hyper-realism art, which is kind of on the other extreme of abstract art, it's so hyper-realistic. And you kind of get lost in the ability of the artist to do this amazing thing. But with Jan van Eyck, you get lost in the person. You get
Yes.
lost in the subject. You don't get lost in somebody's ability to do something or kind of confused with what they were trying to do. You know exactly what he was doing here. And
this is beyond the level of a painting that looks photorealistic.
It is.
It's so beyond it, because you can do something photorealistic and not capture the essence of the person, their soul. But the way Jan van Eyck captures the person, you feel like you look at them and go, I know that person.
Yeah.
And you feel like there's like a strong connection right away. I mean, and especially the way he does eyes. I was just blown away, zooming in on the detail in the eyes, not because of how realistic it is, but it really feels like a window to the soul.
Yeah, there's a depth there. You could almost have, you almost expect him to start speaking to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what I love, this face of this man who lived all those centuries ago, and here we are, absolutely connected. It's like he's sitting right next to us. And
then Alix, you got to tell us about the words on the frame.
Oh yes, he said, as best as as well as I can. That's what it says at the top. So that was his.
Now, is it really a play on his name? I thought I saw that in a couple places.
Right. It is. So it's a play on his name, and it's kind of to show. It's like a. I don't want to say false humility, because I'm the kind of person that I think if you can do something, it's not arrogant to say you can do it. Mm-hmm. If you can do it well. You know, I always think about if you ever have read Beowulf, and you know, he's like, oh, he's such a boastful man. Well, no, he is actually not. He can do exactly what he says he can do. And it's the same thing with Jan van Eyck. As well as I can. Yes, as well as you can. I mean, and look at the folds on his, that is not a turban on his head. I believe that is called a chaperon. And he knew what turbans looked like, because when we look at the Ghent Altarpiece, there are some of the figures have turbans. So he knew what a turban looked like, but that's not what this is. This is, and
he was rather well traveled.
He was very well traveled.
Yeah.
He was very well educated, and this was a fantastic self-portrait. And it's very tiny, very tiny, and so
he either had really good eyes or a magnifying glass.
Probably a little bit of both. You know, they used a lot of tools. You know, again, as I was looking this up, I mean, you know, there are some things in the Ghent Altarpiece, and you're going, how on earth did they do that? But then reading some research papers, and I felt kind of better, because in one of the research papers, the researcher who actually was involved in cleaning the Ghent Altarpiece, she said, this was so overwhelming. I thought, okay, it's not just us. This is something, and there are techniques now that have been lost that they used. So we don't know. You had the camera obscura, which I think certainly the Dutch masters were using in the 16th century. There could have been something similar here.
Oh, there's a new one that's available to artists now.
Yes, I think I've seen it. Yeah. From the night, I can't remember what it's called, but people have used things all over I mean, you can use tools, and then if you actually know what you're doing and you're talented, it's only going to help enhance your talent. It's kind of like, you know, I don't even know what to compare it to, because
it's funny. I was thinking about it, because a lot of times when you mention to someone that you use a tool to help you accomplish something, they're like, oh, then you didn't do it by hand. And it's like, well, no, that would be like saying, instead of using a hand saw, I used a bandsaw. I'm sorry. You know, or I didn't nibble at this like a beaver, you know, carving this piece of wood. No, you know, so tools are part of the human experience. It's what we do to accomplish the task that we have in mind. When we do the 3D printers, that's a little different. I know someone's got to program the shape, although sometimes there's scanners that do it for you. So there are bits of technology that have gone beyond and are trying to do it for you. But there are tools that help an artist to accomplish what they need to do. And especially in a time crunch in trying to accomplish something, to get it done in a deadline, you're not going to do the constant detail of hand drawing, careful, when you've already like drawn it once. I'll draw a sketch and I want that exact sketch larger. I'm going to use my art projector to make it the size I want.
And that's what they did. And also, I don't even know if they thought about it in those ways. Like, oh, this isn't authentic. I mean, if you had a workshop and you had different people working for you and with you, and you had immense things to do, you used what you could. And, but again, underneath all of that, the foundation of that was a profound natural talent, and understanding of the subject matter.
Yeah.
And certainly for the Ghent Altarpiece, a really deep understanding of what was happening in the Mass. And all of that, so if they wanted to use something to help them out a little bit, that would be like me or you, doing embroidery. Oh, well, we didn't use a needle. We just kind of poked the thread. I mean, I guess you could do it that way, but it's not going to look the same.
Behind me on this side, I've got my magnifying glass.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And that enables me to do a lot of detail in a tiny little space.
Exactly. And I'm sure they had things like that all over their workshop. And some things have been lost to time. But, was it Grace Builds on Nature? And I think it's the same thing with some of the tools that we use. So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Good tangent.
But, it was. So again, going back to Jan van Eyck, he was trained as a miniaturist and an artist under some of Netherlands masters in the Paris workshops, and he has been identified in what we're looking at here is the Turin Milan Hours, Book of Hours. And he has been identified as Hand G, meaning that he painted certain things in this book. So several different artists worked on this incredible Book of Hours. And this is what Jan van Eyck did. And one of the reasons he has been identified as Hand G is because of this image of, I believe this is
the Nativity of John the Baptist.
That's right, Nativity of John the Baptist. And I love the one nurse who's kind of trying to get the little toddler to maybe pick him up to see the newborn baby or something. But if you take a look at the young woman in blue, and that would have been Our Lady, because she's got the blue robe with the red interior, and you can see that she looks like she's expecting. And if you see the way her head is tilted and her arm is outstretched, it is the same position as the bride in the Arnolfini marriage portrait. And in the background, you can see there are some people like down the hallway from her. And that, in a way, mirrors Jan van Eyck in the back of the two subjects in the mirror.
It mirrors the mirror.
It mirrors the mirror. Thank you. Yes, that's a good way to put it. It mirrors the mirror. And so so you can see he was trained. He worked with, very similar to Bouguereau, when they will work with things that work. And so this particular posture, and the arms outstretched and the draping of the fabrics is very, very similar. And but this particular image, it's in a book, and it's very tiny.
Yes.
And so he could, and we'll talk about scale and how they could go, how these artists, these brothers, and not just them, but a lot of the Flemish primitives who were doing this kind of work, they knew how to go from a very tiny scale to a very large scale. They used techniques to do this. And I'm sure they must have had some kind of projection or some kind of grafting that they had to do in order to get all the proportions right.
Yeah.
So.
I find it fascinating seeing the work in a manuscript. And then it also makes me wonder, was there a separate artist to do all the little vining work around the outside? And
I think
did he do just the inside? Because just like there's separate people to do the calligraphy work.
Yeah.
So it's neat to see. And then I did see, just to, rabbit hole myself hours and hours on the computer, you can actually purchase a reproduction of the entire book.
Oh my gosh.
If you have the money for it. We'll put the link in the show
free?
notes. Oh, golly. I wish it was, but no, it's not. But oh my gosh, they do such beautiful work. I think it had like a velveteen cover on it if you want to get really crazy.
Oh, wow.
But we'll definitely put a link in the show notes to the company that does that if you feel like you really want to have some beautiful artwork in your home with the
nice Christmas
hours. Gift. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And then I had to take a closer look at this beautiful little piece at the bottom of the page. So you go from John the Baptist's birth to then him baptizing Christ in the little scene at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
And, John's kneeling at the riverside. Christ is in the water in the riverbank. Beautiful little sun glitters across the water and little waves here and there. And as you look into the painting, you just keep going further and further back, and there's still so much detail.
Yeah, there's a windmill in the back.
There's two little windmills back there. I was like shocked every time I went closer.
Yeah.
And then even seeing the moon out, tucked behind the sun. And I think we got a little closer even yet.
Yeah.
Just to take you into a whole other world. Little people walking on a path up the hillside.
Yeah.
Trees off in the distance, a castle on a hillside.
Yeah, yeah. It's and all the different trees, these broadleaf trees. And I'm just thinking, if you go back to the baptism of Christ, so if you look at that, thank you. So you have God the Father in the D, you have the Holy Spirit coming down, you have the Son. So there you have the Trinity. But then, of course, Our Lady is traditionally associated with the moon.
Yes.
So it's kind of like you've got everybody there.
Yeah.
So, and I would say, I don't know if they meant to do that, but somehow I think, they didn't do anything randomly. These guys.
Yeah, there's nothing really random about this.
No. Okay. So, one of the things, and if we can show a couple of more images that Jan van Eyck painted, he perfected what's called the 3/4 view of the subject.
Yes.
Now, the man on the left is Jan de Leek, and the woman on the right is Margaret van Eyck, who was Jan van Eyck's wife. And of course, she has that same kind of, I don't know if you'd call that a wimple or some kind of veil that the bride in the Arnolfini portrait had, that white with the little pinking of this really fine, high quality wool. And, but this 3/4 angle of the human face is not an easy thing to draw.
No.
Or paint, or to get right, because if you get it wrong, it looks really wonky. But
yeah, you kind of flatten the nose sometimes, or the cheek sticks out too far. Yeah,
it's amazing. You just shift something a little tiny bit, and the whole thing it's like a house of cards sometimes.
Yeah.
But and I would imagine that these two are quite small as well. In fact, Jan de Leek there, he does look kind of scrunched up in the painting itself. And, but this 3/4 angle is something that he really, and of course, when you're doing something like this, there's a method to it. And whatever method he used was absolutely perfect. And
because we can zoom in a little closer on their faces.
Yeah. And again, the way the eyes look at you, they look right at you. Here we are looking at them digitally, and they look like they're looking at us. It's amazing.
Yeah, I would have to say the portrait of Jan there, the first time I looked, I was like, that looks so familiar. Like he could be someone just walking down the street right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was amazing.
They both
And I
could.
love this. He has the stubble on his chin.
Yeah.
Must have been a trendy thing for the time because quite a few of the men in the Van Eyck paintings have stubble.
That's true. Or, who knows how close a shave, or, maybe it was something you shaved, maybe people didn't shave every single day.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah. Why bother?
Yeah.
But clearly, and he's got his fur lined coat, and I believe, I'm not sure what kind of hat he's wearing, but
yeah, it's hard to tell even in the full image because
he looks like
it's lost.
Maybe it's another form of a chaperone. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a wrap.
Yeah, looks like he probably could get some cleaning. Have a little bit of, that makes a big difference. It just brightens everything up. And then we have Margaret on the left, and I think he actually did this portrait, if I remember. It was for one of their anniversaries, which is really sweet.
Aw, that is sweet.
Yeah.
She has a wonderful facial expression where she can, you feel like she can go stern real easily, but at the same time, she's tender.
Yes.
Yeah.
She might be quick to smile, but quick to be angry as well.
And then I had to take another closer look.
Yeah.
The eye, again, beautifully done, just looks through you and lets you in at the same time.
Yeah. And reflective. Yeah.
Yes. And could not resist zooming in on the little hair style there.
Yeah.
So, totally to put Padme Amidala jealous.
Yeah.
If you're not a Star Wars geek, you don't know that's, one of the amazing headpieces of the Queen of the Naboo.
Yeah, I'm sure that this was, I'm sure she had some kind of influence on this, or on the costumes for Queen Amidala. But, the lace that's around her hair, and it might have been her hair, could have been some kind of, they must have done something to stiffen it, and it could have even been her hair wrapped around something underneath there. I don't know how they would have done such a complex hairstyle, but just the lace, it was probably, that had to have been made from silk, possibly, and it looks like it was probably lace, or it could have been crocheting, something like that. And you can see.
Okay, I just had a crazy thought. All of her hair could actually be tucked up and behind.
Yeah.
And that could be horsehair already preformed on a little thing you just put on.
Yeah, like a little hat. Yeah. Yeah, like a little...
Just to make it look like she's got a very elaborate hairdo.
Well, it's interesting because there was a lot of the women had that, and I can't imagine somebody... I mean, women have always had a little bit of help, when it comes to some of these hairstyles. I mean, even today, the things that people are willing to go through to get their hair done. But also you can see a little bit of the veil, the woolen veil that she has, how it was probably gathered and pulled and then sheared. It must have been fascinating. I'm sure some of these YouTubers who like to recreate historical costumes, somebody must have figured out how to do that. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that'd be gorgeous.
I'd love to wear something.
It looks like the side of the wedding cakes where they just squiggle the frosting. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and the braid going underneath. So that does actually suggest that might be something that she would put on her head, and it wouldn't be her hair. Is this braid going just following along the little cone shape? Even that, the highlights on every single little braid, plait of the braid. Yeah. Incredible gorgeous detail. Yeah. Now I have to say, when he died, his greatest patron was Philip the Good, who was the Duke of Burgundy at the time. And when Jan van Eyck died, the Duke gave his wife, I believe it was either 1 or 2 years' pay that he would have received as the court artist, which was
Nice.
incredible. And and he paid tribute to Jan van Eyck. Jan van Eyck actually had a very interesting political career as well. He was kind of a diplomat slash artist. He went to Portugal and painted the Infanta of Portugal who was going to be and turned out to be the Duke's wife, and so he had that job of negotiating and painting the portrait at the same time, and that must have been interesting. An interesting job. So he really was quite, like I said, he was so prominent in so many different ways, and he was also very influential on other artists of the time in Europe. And of course, because of where he was, you would have artists coming up from Venice and other parts of Italy and Germany and England, France, everywhere. And what he and his brother were able to do with oil painting was extraordinary. Now, there used to be a legend that he invented oil painting, but that's not true.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, it kind of is really cool, and you almost want it to be true. Like he's like in his workshop, and I don't know, something happens, and like by magic, like he's like Gandalf, and he just comes up with something. Or
I'm sure in the like movie version of his life, they would have it as if
I was thinking
he created it.
Or I'm just thinking, is it? No, I'm gonna get in trouble here. It's not Feanor who made the Cimmerils, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah,
and but he didn't. I think so. There is evidence that some Benedictines were using oil paints, like in the 12th century. But I think what he and his brother did is they perfected
absolutely
the technique of blending the oils and the type of oils and varnishes that they used. And so whatever the pigment was suspended in, they really are the ones they worked on mixing it in such a way that they could paint thin layer over thin layer and still have the layers underneath come through. And that's one of the reasons that so much of their paintings just seem to glow. And it was a really, it was a technique that nobody had done before. And so I think you do have a couple of examples. One is the one on the left is a young man in, I'm going to just say it's another chaparral.
Yeah.
It's quite an extraordinary headpiece he's wearing. And this is by Jan van Eyck. It's an early painting by his. And I think you can see that, he's over the years, he perfected his technique. And
similar pose to the previous portrait we looked at with the man holding a ring in his hand.
Yeah, that's, he's got a ring as well. And I think that is something that you do see a lot in the Flemish primitives. In fact, I remember going to a museum, and sometimes some artists were quite clever, and they would paint the tips of the fingers over the frame, so it actually looked like the person's hand was coming out of the painting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they were really quite clever and had some humor there, and as I said, extraordinary talent. So this was Jan van Eyck's painting of a young man in a blue chaperon. And then on the right is an Italian artist who was very influenced by Jan van Eyck. Now in Italy, they really just used, but they painted on frescoes, they used egg tempera, or they painted on wet plaster. And so it had a different effect. But when the Flemish artists in the north started using oil paintings, they were getting a more realistic or a softer renderings of faces and images that they just couldn't get with the egg tempera, a lot of times it would look chalky, and egg tempera certainly has its purpose. And there's some things that you can do with egg tempera that you can't do with anything else. So, each one serves its purpose. So the portrait of the Blessed Mother on the right is by Antonello della Messina, and so he was an early follower of Jan van Eyck. I don't know if they were contemporaries, but he definitely was influenced, and so he started using oils. And then we all know what happened, with when you go into the Renaissance and then the Baroque era, the Italians really figured out what they were doing with oil painting as well. Mm-hmm. And so, but Jan van Eyck, the Van Eycks were the ones who kind of started it all, and did it in such an extraordinary way. And like I said, so we could go in, I'm just looking, gosh, it's been an hour. Still talking about him.
Well, we gotta see this piece.
Yeah, let's show this one, because this is kind of will make sense. So this is a good way to kind of wrap up Jan van Eyck's life. So he painted this he was commissioned by Canon Joris van de Pele, and this is called the Virgin and Child with Canon Joris van de Pele. And it's the second largest Van Eyck painting. So all the other ones seem quite small. When you start getting into this painting, and then of course the altarpiece, then they're massive. Mm-hmm. But and again, the canon was there. It wasn't like, I guess you could be kind of cynical and go, this is kind of like somebody builds a massive wing of a hospital and they want to name it after themselves. I mean, okay, maybe, but again, they were living in a very different world. And when patrons would put themselves into the painting, it was because they wanted people to remember to pray for them. They knew they needed prayer. Yeah. When, after they died. And this was a way of actually it was a very humble way of asking for prayer by putting yourself in something like this. And this is such a beautiful, beautiful painting. I mean, my gosh, we could do an episode on this one. You could just get lost in everything, whether it's...
That's what's so amazing about their paintings, is you really can just go detail by detail. I mean, we could do a whole season of Van Eyck work.
One of the things I have to say I found out about this one, and this is beautiful, and this is to show you, they knew what they were doing on so many different levels, the theology behind this. So in this painting, you have the Blessed Mother with the Christ child on her lap, and you have the canon soliciting, as praying, showing her reverence, and the cloth behind her is called the cloth of honor. And this was something that was reserved. Yeah, this was something that was reserved for royalty, and obviously for someone of power, and, religious or otherwise. And this cloth is, it has all kinds of flowers that would have some kind of association with the Blessed Mother. And her red cloak at the time, and we're talking about the meaning of colors. So the red for the Blessed Mother in this represents the love she has for her children, all of her children. And if you kind of zoom out again to see the whole thing, it was very much intentional that this love in the form of a red cloak was overflowing and coming down, and almost, kind of coming down, almost reaching out to all of these patrons around her, and then reaching out to the viewers as well. Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. Yeah. I love the cloth behind her, how it has a garden feel.
Yeah.
So you can really see her as the new Eve.
Exactly. Yeah. The new Adam and the new Eve. And I think the Christ child is holding a bird. And and it looks like an exotic bird, actually. It looks like it might be some kind of parrot. And I'll be honest, I have read about it, but I can't, it's not coming to my head at the moment. And
Okay.
I'm just so overwhelmed by, there's just so many things that we could go into. Oh, and look, right behind her, if you see, I think that would be Cain and Abel.
I was going to say that looks like Cain and Abel in the center of this image, right underneath the glass window there.
Yeah.
And again, that's another signature Van Eyck imagery, is that, what do they call it? Bottom glass.
Bottle
where the
glass.
is, yes,
Yeah.
where it looks, the spun disc of glass.
Yeah.
So just beautifully done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
And-
their whole like focus on optics and light is so
Yeah.
beautifully played out.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that is a deep dive, and if anybody has any questions about this particular image, maybe they could put it in our Discord chat, and we can do a little bit of research. But I tell you, this one, you know what, you could spend your whole life just on one Van Eyck painting.
Yes, I would love our listeners to look up some of these links and zoom in on something that you find special and share it with us on Discord.
Yeah, because there's so much. There's so much.
Now, in our house right now, this is the time of year for puzzles. We're recording as we're going into Advent, and I could not imagine these as puzzles.
I know. Yeah,
It'd be so difficult.
It would be, but and also it would just be difficult because you'd spend half the time just staring at one piece, getting lost in one little piece instead of putting them all together. But yeah, it's,
I have one other face I got lost in.
Okay, yeah.
And it's this one. I believe he's a cardinal. He's in his red. I forget his name right now. But when I first saw this face and zoomed in on it, especially knowing that he looks almost about the same age as my dad right now. And it's like, what a beautiful way to paint someone who's at that point in life where you've gained wisdom, you've gained knowledge, and you're just kind of in that moment of life where things don't change quickly. You don't want them to. And then the way that he did the eyes and the wrinkles, it made, again, someone who felt familiar. And I just love the way Van Eyck tackled people having an older face and an older soul. You can pick it up in the eyes. Yeah.
Including himself. And his wife. He was very, so this is just the first part of this. And I wish that we could spend a little more time, but that's why we're going to have it in two parts. So
yes,
and we're going to do our best to tackle it, but not at all touching even a little tiny bit of it. But we want everyone to just join us in this adventure. It is going to be fun. This is going to be a deep dive. It is the most incredible piece of art I've ever really studied. And we've not really studied it, have we? I mean, I feel like we're just touching the surface, and I feel like I need to go to Ghent.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And not just for the chocolate.
Oh no.
Yeah, but so we would love for everyone to join us next time when we show you a little bit more about the world of the brothers Van Eyck through the Ghent Altarpiece. And now I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of sacred art, including Rob H., Frank C., Claire R., David G., and Grant S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of sacred art and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/gives.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening and hopefully watching on YouTube, The Secrets of Sacred Art. We'll be back next time when we do a deep dive into the greatest work created by the brothers Van Eyck, the Ghent Altarpiece. Until next time, I'm Kathryn Laffrey.
And I'm Alix Murray, and we hope you find something beautiful. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.